I want to let people know that the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center does a get-together virtually these days, and sometimes even in person, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We call it Something to Talk About, and it is sponsored by Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers innovative and compassionate care, and they are accepting residents at their beautifully appointed apartments on Rolling Bay today. They also are offering day stay and respite programs. To learn more, call 360-689-4314. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. We honor them and are grateful for their hospitality. Katy?
Thanks so much, Reed. It's so great to be here, and I want to appreciate the Senior Center. We've been doing different history programs for years now, and they were in person, and now they've been online. And so this is History Museum at the Senior Center series. And my name is Katy Curtis. I am the community outreach manager of the Bainbridge Island Historical Museum. And today's topic is how we are motivated to create change and what brings us to create change. And in March, we often do programs that have to do with social justice. March, of course, is the time we commemorate the leaving and the forced removal of the Bainbridge Island Japanese American neighbors and friends and family in 1942. And this year marks the 80th anniversary of that. And we learn about the exclusion in so many different ways. At the Multicultural Advisory Council meeting last night, we went around, there might have been about 30 people there, and it was fascinating how some people just heard about it 8 months ago, and other people might have heard about it in high school. And pretty much it was the people whose parents or grandparents had experienced it or who had experienced it themselves that had known about it their whole life. But most people didn't know about it. So in that, we also always want to recognize the hero of Dr. Frank Kitamoto. Dr. Frank Kitamoto was someone who was a mover and shaker, a change maker, someone who wanted to bring to the attention of the island the history of Japanese Americans on the island and the history of the exclusion during World War II in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Today, we are so happy to have and honored to have two students with us. These students are change makers in their communities and in our community. And they are the winners of special awards that happen at the high school. One award is called the Dr. Martin Luther King Inspiration Award, and it goes to the student that expresses inspiration from Dr. Martin Luther King. And fondly, I've referred to Frank Kitamoto before as our Bainbridge Island Martin Luther King. And we wanted to honor him by giving a student an award. So the other student award winner today won the Dr. Frank Kitamoto Legacy Award for Inclusion, Civil Rights, and Social Justice. And I just have to put a note out. It is Women's History Month, and last night, again, that meeting, Dr. Frank Kitamoto's wife was at the meeting, and she said, it's all fine and good that we honor Dr. Kitamoto, but remember, he did it with others. It wasn't just him. And I just thought that that was so powerful to remember. And so as we hold up our heroes, we want to remember that they're supported by their communities. I would like to go ahead and introduce my other two co-hosts today. And if they would then introduce the awards and the award winners a little bit, that would be great. So I am joined today by teacher Emily and Chastity, leader and friend, and just tell us a little bit about the Frank Kitamoto Award and then the award winners, and then Chastity, if you could introduce yourself. So I'm turning it over to Emily.
Katy, I'm going to ask you just to repeat my directions one more time. Lunch just started on campus, and so a bunch of people were walking by and I had them close my door, so I didn't hear what you were saying. So one more time, please.
Simple 1-sentence, 2-sentence introduction, and just who the introducing briefly the Frank Kitamoto Award winner, and then turning it to Chastity to introduce herself.
Perfect. All right. My name is Mlk Eigen. I am a teacher at Bainbridge High School. I teach humanities, English, and French. And I also get to work with the Multicultural Association, the Multicultural Advisory Council, and with our district on equity issues. So that's a really important part of my job. I also have the privilege of working with the student equity team at BHS. And so I want to introduce you to Gigi Hendrickson. Gigi, I was delighted to see, was this year's Dr. Frank Kitamoto Award winner, and she has been a really strong activist in our community since I have known her. I was introduced to her through her activism at Woodward, where she set up the Woodward Ally Group that continues to meet. She has spoken at their Martin Luther King Jr. assemblies, and she continues to be a really strong leader for social change here at Bainbridge High School and at Eagle Harbor High School, especially in areas around global health. So that's Gigi. She's a junior here at BHS.
Perfect. Chastity.
And Emily, the student equity team, and is amazing teacher as well, French and some other things. So she's not tooting her own horn, but I'll toot for you. Toot, toot. My name is Chastity Malatessa. I'm a former teacher. I have 20 years, and then I bred little people. So I have 2 7-year-olds and a 10-year-old that are reteaching me everything I know about human development. But I do equity work as a consultant for College Board and for others. But in this capacity, I'm just a co-chair with the Multicultural Advisory Council and a member of the community that cares about equity and lifts up elders like Karen Vargas and our Gina Corpaz and the Tabafundas and the Kitamotos as a responsibility of our community to keep going with the history of equity on the island. And I learned most of my stuff from Katy. I get to introduce Chloe Lightle, who is an artist at BHS, who was able to, the MLK is a little bit different award. The Frank Kitamoto is a legacy award for his actions, humanitarian work with human rights in North Kitsap. The Mlk Inspiration Award is more for the creativity and expression that comes with students who are inspired by MLK. And so it can be a dance, visual, whatever. There's nothing that it cannot be, because we know in the interest of equity, art is a profound conduit for equity, whether it be health or anything other. We know our artists are creating things that are giving people the realization and the whole perspective of what equity is. Chloe did this in a collage, and I'm not sure if you can post that right now to our administrators, but I would love if it was. There we go. She was able to compose a piece, and what was really powerful about this young lady was, as she was discussing it, and maybe I should let her do that, but she talked about how, as she was processing and putting this piece of art together, that her understanding grew of equity and those issues. And I think it highlighted, first, this is phenomenal. It's very beautiful aesthetically and for many other reasons. And it Christina Rogers told me that they're going to tell us where this is going to be placed in the BHS hall so other people can see it. Hopefully, maybe even open up so the community members can come see. But she really spoke to how this develops and maybe in teaching equity and how it's not going to come, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2, that it's in the development of the curriculum, how it needs to be woven through for students to gain an understanding and the many layers of equity. And I just thought this was absolutely beautiful. And Chloe is a delightful young woman.
Thanks so much. Actually, yeah, if you want to leave it up there, that's great, because next I'd like the award winners to just briefly introduce yourselves and a little bit about what you're working on as far as change. But Chloe, since it's up there, why don't you start with your introduction of yourself and what you're working on for change a little bit, and help us and make any comments you would like to make about your beautiful artwork.
All right. Hi. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Is the audio
Yes.
okay? Okay,
Yes.
Cool. Well, hi, I'm Chloe. I am in 10th grade. So I'm a sophomore here at BHS. One thing I'm working on changing, this is kind of more of like a personal thing for me, but just kind of just expanding my learning. Like there's a lot that I don't know. And like, I think it was Chastity who said it earlier, but like there's a lot that goes into equity. And so I'm still trying to like grasp what it means and like what goes into it. So that's kind of one thing for me that I'm working to change and to grow.
Katy, you're muted.
Oh, I'd love to leave your image up there, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you to stop sharing, Reed, because I want Gigi to be able to introduce herself and tell us what she's working on, and we can just pop up that image whenever we want. Hi, Gigi.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us and for that wonderful introduction, Miss Eigen. I mean, to answer the question about the most pressing issues we're facing right now, or what our group is most committed to, Global Health Club at the high school, I think the right to health is probably the most, I think, fundamental and obvious to our group, because health is like such an obvious thing that at least we think just like it's just so obvious that everyone should have a right to their health. That is like one of the most intrinsic things to human beings. And it's absurd and infuriating that that right to health has been commodified and that you have to pay to have access to your own healthy body and mind. So I think the right to health is a huge thing that our group is committed to. And then while I'm on this platform, I'm also part of a group called FAE at the high school, and we talk a lot about the politics of sex and love. And so I think that we have a lot of things wrong right now with how we have sexual relations and how we love each other, and especially the impacts of porn on young people. So those are some things that, while we're here, I love bringing that up with people who don't expect I'm going to say that. But yeah, that is something else that we're thinking about. And that's more of an individual thing, like Chloe was saying. And a lot of change does need to be systemic, and most change cannot be sustainable without system change. FAE, like the fairy, Faye. Yeah, but I think also it does need to be on an individual level too. And I think when we're talking about sex and love, you do have to look at your own self and what you bring to relationships and the world of love. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's so wonderful. Welcome, Gigi. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's just such an honor to have you here as a change maker. And I heard from both of you that like with health, and like with love and sex, and like with equity, it has a lot to do with understanding that it's an ongoing process and that we're all learning. And so that just really impresses me. And I would venture to say that both Martin Luther King and Frank Kitamoto definitely were continuous lifelong learners, because they definitely continued to teach all the way to the end. So I'm just wondering, Let's see, Emily, or do you have any other questions for our wonderful students that you'd like to ask?
I think that one of the things I'm really curious about is how you see your generation taking action. Like, how do you see the best ways to motivate your generation to develop passions, whether they're passions for the arts or passions for topics? And how do you get them to act on those passions? So I'd love to hear what Chloe and Gigi have to think about that, like your generation specifically, because this is a wonderfully multi-generational audience we have here today.
I can start if that's okay, Chloe. Yeah, I was looking at this question in the email last night, and I was trying to think, because I know there are a lot of ways that I think motivation. I think that social media. I know that a lot of people do talk about the benefits of social media, and Global Health Club was talking about this the other day. But I also see social media giving us so much access to diluted information and so much access to doing actions that don't always like make the most impact. And so I think that like social media is one of those really popular things, but I think that it can be kind of harmful because it gives us like such an opportunity to feel satisfied and like we're making social change, when all we're really doing is like posting something on our story or liking something or maybe signing a petition. And I think kind of the deeper message of what that kind of shows. And our generation has done a lot of wonderful things, but I think it's also okay to acknowledge that a lot of our advocacy in our generation is self-serving and flaky. And I think there is definitely, teenagers, we can be impulsive, and it can feel really, really good to get into social justice work. And I think it's really easy for us to get into it for the wrong reasons, to do it to ease some of the guilt that we have, or to make ourselves feel like we're philanthropic. So I think kind of getting in touch, and it's so hard to know your own motivations. I don't even always know mine, but I think maybe starting with yourself, like we were talking about a little bit before, and being aware of the arrogance that you bring to advocacy, being aware that there is a lot that you contribute to issues, and also getting in touch with your feelings and your empathy and your capacity for love, and trying to do advocacy with those motivations rather than to make yourself feel good. And when you're on social media and you're liking posts, just remind yourself that that cannot be the end of your social justice work. If you do want to make change, it's definitely a good place to start to spread awareness. But just be careful that you don't pat yourself on the back too much just for being on Instagram, and go find a group that's doing good stuff like Global Health Club. Yeah, so it's kind of a bad answer. I don't know quite how to do motivation, but I don't know, maybe not always social media.
I was going to ask a follow-up. So actually I have two follow-ups. The first is, would you please define the term performative? Because that is a word that I learned from your generation. And I think that's exactly what you're describing there, that danger of performative activism.
Yeah, and this goes with what you were just saying, Katy, about how this is a long ongoing process, and Global Health was also talking about this on Monday, and how it's such a privilege to get super excited and into an issue for a few months and then kind of forget about it when it's not as glamorous or exciting for you anymore. And so I think that as long as we're getting into advocacy to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, there is no way that we can ever be truly committed and truly doing advocacy for the purpose of that change. And so I think performative activism, that is when you get into advocacy work, you make it known that you care about issues, but just so people know that you care, and just so you look like you are a caring person, rather than actually. Oftentimes there's a mix. Oftentimes people do actually care, but the only kind of activism they see is performative, so they think that that's kind of the end all be all. But yeah, that is a huge issue, and I think social media just encourages that so much because of how easy it is to just have a performance on social media. But like you're saying, Katy, I think it's an ongoing process that does need to leave social media at some point, and you do need to kind of just recognize your own ego and that it's participation in your advocacy work, and try to just get in touch with love, because I think that's always the strongest motivation.
What you're saying about the ego is really interesting to me, Gigi, and I'm wondering, Chloe, with art, if you see me, people on if you see me looking over here, it's because Chloe and Gigi are both in my classroom, so I can see them in real life too. Anyway, I was wondering, with art, I think we also have to deal with our ego as artists. And I was wondering, do you see a similar kind of relationship between motivation and ego and creation, right? Of not necessarily social change, but art.
Break that down a little bit.
Yeah, so when artists are creating, how much does their ego play into the act of creating something new? Because Gigi's describing activism as, you know, you have to constantly watch your ego to make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons and you're not doing them for self-serving reasons. And I feel like I hear artists sometimes talk about something similar, about this process of needing to be fully aware of the role your own self is playing in what you're producing and how much you want that to be about you and how much you want it to be about your art.
Yeah, sorry. that was a lot. I think that is like what you said at the end, that was like really interesting about like what you're putting on the page and like what you're drawing or creating and like how much you want that to reflect you, or if you're trying to get it to reflect something else, you know, because it's while it's like, for example, what I did, it's like while I am the one, you know, making the art, it's like it's not for me. It's not like and so I guess it is kind of, I personally, I didn't even think about like, you know, who, I mean, obviously, I mean, trying to inspire through artwork, but, you know, just that thought of like, what reason, I guess. And so I think that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to think about a little more. Hopefully that kind of answers your question. It wasn't really straightforward.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Chloe. It relates to one thing that you said before, which is that it's almost like you described that you caught yourself maybe inspired by Martin Luther King to try, you know, like, okay, I will do this as kind of a gift to that inspiration. But you described about how you were actually learning about yourself as you were choosing what parts to put there and as you put it on the page. And so I feel like in a way, if you were doing it to look good, it would be performative. And if you were going to be the best one in order to win an award, that would be performative. But the way that this is described, that you created this artwork that really spoke to all of us, was so delightful, because you said you actually were inspired to do it, and then it became a reflective process. And that was really, really lovely. So I don't know if that kind of connects to what you were saying.
No, I think you, that pretty much summed it up. Thank you. Yeah, that was good.
That's great. So I just, this is a little bit off topic, but Lily, are you there? Can I ask Lily a question?
You may ask me a question.
Thank you. I was thinking about this because I was thinking about motivation. One of our questions is like, how do we inspire others? And how do we find motivation for social change that's not for ego, that's not performative? And it reminds me of your brother, Frank, and it reminds me of you. And do you have any reflection about maybe some of Frank's motivation to speak out when it was risky for him, and then maybe your motivation to speak out as well? Do you have any?
Well, I can't speak for Frank, but I do know that he was really adamant about social justice and racism. I mean, he thought all of that was so wrong. But for myself, I really was not the one who was comfortable speaking in public. But when Frank passed away, and and Kane Sakai Nakao and my Aunt Fumi, those were the three who were always willing to speak to groups and speak out. And I was sort of in the background. And then when they all three have passed away, and there were many people were not comfortable, and I understood that because I too was not comfortable, but I felt someone had to continue to tell the story so that it wouldn't be lost again. And so I felt compelled to do it. And as I've done it so many times, it's become easier and easier. And then I realized, why am I so hesitant? Because it's sort of an ego thing. I mean, I was worried about making a fool of myself or that sort of thing. And I realized that was not a good thing. And so anyway, now I play my senior card and say, if I make a goof, I'm just a little old lady. But I have to admit, it's become easier and easier. And I am, I feel it's necessary for.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's that kind of need that will also pull you past your ego, you know, at times, if we can manage that. I see that in you, and I saw that in Frank, that it's just kind of that being driven to do it, you know. So yeah, that's really great. Chastity, do you have any question that you wanted to ask our students?
I did. I realized I did have a question that was looming from the last time we had heard from Gigi and Chloe. Gigi and Chloe, you know, those of us community members that are outside, not in the inside of the beautiful school like your amazing teacher, Emily, but have been watching students really come and vocalize issues that are important to them, from sexual assault, education, to George Floyd, to this move in partners. I think Partners in Health and global health. There's so many health things going on in so many clubs. I'm trying to keep up, sis, with the pronouns. I'm trying to, as an old Black lady. But listen, what makes a group of people at Bainbridge High School, for example, with the Global Health Club, and obviously as an African-American woman, racism is structurally on my mind every day. I'm reminded of that. But I'm fascinated with a group of people from Bainbridge Island that are like focused on global health. What was the impetus that is driving that? Because I know both of those groups are quite large in dealing with it. And then also, is it because of the intersections? Because, you know, our generation wasn't, I mean, I was new to climate and racism and health and racism, and yet those are really on the forefront of most of these emerging issues, are things that we didn't use that word for. Intersection meant something totally different 10 years ago. So that was a big question. So Gigi and Chloe, bite off whatever piece, and I'm listening.
Yeah, let me get on this global health. Yeah, I think the question about what is the most pressing issue, answering the right to health, is kind of cheating, because to ensure the right to health, you have to address like every single other pressing issue in our society, because gender is a determinant of health, race is a determinant of health, the state of our climate is a determinant of health. So I think that our club is definitely an intersectional club. We recognize that structural racism, colonialism, gender inequality, climate change, all these things determine people's like access to their right to health. And I also think that like there is no, like I don't see how our world could ever move forward on any issue if people are still chained to their ill health. And I think giving people their right to health is one of the most effective ways of empowering people, because like if you are chained to your ill health, there's almost no way that you can really, really, truly be whole and empowered and able to continue with whatever kind of work you're doing, whether that's for social justice or just like living your best life. And so I think that the right to health just kind of encompasses everything and just seems like the most obvious to our group. So I think that's why we focus on the right to health. And we do try to make all of our conversations as intersectional as possible. We are not a medical club. We do really just focus on like the politics and the social sciences of the right to health. And we are amazing. And while I'm here, we meet every Monday after school. Meet us in the wagon wheel. new members are always welcome. Next meeting, we're talking about Frantz Fanon, and we're getting into violence in a colonial context. So you should come. All we do is discuss. All our meetings are discussions. We learn a lot. We have fun. We even have a mission chant at the end of meetings. So you should come. We have a really good time. And there are so many things that we need to improve on, do better on. We're all just like high school kids. But I think what makes us effective is I think that a lot of us really genuinely do care. And it's just so amazing to just like talk to each other. And yeah, so it's such an honor to be a part of that group. But yeah, we have a lot to improve on, but I think our genuine passion, I think, is what makes us maybe special.
Do you mean that if like old folks like us showed up, that would be okay?
We usually do. It's usually for high school students, but we do have guest speakers sometimes. And we could do like, Mac could come to a meeting or something. We could do like a little Mac Global Health Club co-op. That could be fun. Yeah, we usually keep it to high school because that's just the easiest for us to like wrangle the high schoolers. Mac is too crazy. We could not wrangle you guys. But I think that yeah, we could try to do something fun if you guys are down. But yeah, everyone and from all high schools around the island are always welcome.
That's fabulous. I love that invitation. Thank you so much. So let's see, I was going to go back to Emily. Emily, do you have a different question for our students?
Well, I think this is a question that actually Anne Lovejoy posted to the chat a little bit ago, and I think follows up really nicely on this. We've seen, I know that like the student equity team has been so excited to be partnering with the Senior Center and the Inclusion Group and the Queer Elders Group and with the Historical Museum, and really we've been loving the intergenerational conversations that happen. And so Gigi, Chloe, how do you think we can tap into this wealth of, I guess, of community here on Bainbridge, of people of many generations who are activists, who are artists, who are professionals, who have energy and experience to share? Can you see ways that maybe as students or as a school, we can start collaborating more meaningfully with our community at large?
Awesome. Yeah, I think the first thing that I'm thinking of, or just, I mean, I'm just with like Global Health Club right now. I think that, and this is going to sound probably crude, but I think that when we're talking about like fundraising, for example, I think just like, so we fundraise for the Maternal Center of Excellence in Sierra Leone. It's a maternal teaching hospital for women and children in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has one of the worst maternal and neonatal mortality rates of the world. And so like one of the biggest things that we do during our fundraising month is raise money and community build. And in order to raise money and community build, we just need people, and we love talking to teenagers too, but teenagers are not where the money is. And so we just, like when we talk to people, like when we're going door to door, if we come to your door, talk to us for a few minutes and just like learn about the cause. And like obviously the pandemic is like a horrific time for a lot of people's like economic insecurities, but I think just like talking and like learning about a problem that does seem very abstract but does fall into the bigger picture of the right to health movement. I don't know, I think the biggest thing is just like talking and just like, I don't know, but I think that we have like so much support, and sometimes I even think too much support. And I think our generation does get away with too many things. And I think that we are really great in a lot of ways, but also like we have like so many flaws, and like we are just still learning. So yeah, I really appreciate the support, and I think just talking, but we also have a lot to learn. And we also can learn from older generations because we're all still in high school and we're also trying to figure things out too. Yeah, I think just talking with us and taking time to listen, I guess.
Thanks, Gigi. Chloe, do you have any oh, yes. Okay, well, we will share this wonderful slide here. So this is for each of you. We had this cake last night at the MAC meeting. We had our first MAC meeting in person. And so it was really fun because Chastity and myself and Brandy and Emily all talked about both of you a lot, and we also acknowledged, you know, how wonderful the students are when it comes to responding to wanting to change and have social justice. So sorry that we didn't deliver it to we didn't deliver it to Emily's classroom. We should have thought of that last night. But isn't it beautiful? It is from the BIJAC, the Bainbridge Island Japanese American community, who you know, supported the honorarium for the Kitamoto Award, and the and who also brought all of the refreshments and everything to our MAC meeting last night. And what we'd like to do is have kind of a tradition that our our March meetings do celebrate the students who are the award winners for MLK and for the Frank Kitamoto Awards. And so you're hereby always invited, and so is your family, to the, you know, to the MAC meeting in March when we celebrate. So thank you, Joyce, for creating this beautiful cake. And thank you to BIJAC for sure. So I was wondering, I wanted to just ask, in terms of being inspired, can either of you share a little bit about either Martin Luther King or what you know about Frank, or any other social activist that brings your heart and alive when you think about their story? So like, what is a story that inspires you? So maybe I'll ask Chloe, do you want to go first?
And I guess I don't necessarily know like story wise, but in terms of like Martin Luther King, I guess how I always saw it is like he preached so much like love and compassion for like everyone, despite like all of the violence and all of the terrible things. And so I think it's like, for me, it's like while, you know, we always, you know, can't sugarcoat like the terrible things that go on, it's like that message of just like love and compassion for just like people is just really like amazing, I guess. And so that's something I think about a lot.
I hear that. I hear that. Thank you. Gigi?
Yeah, I could not agree with that more. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I see this a lot, especially with young people towards the left. I don't know where we got this idea, but I think we think hating the other side is productive, or we think that like hating the other side means that we're doing something for change. And I think the only like thing that hate does, or hating people for their beliefs, even when they're really ugly, is just like worsening divides, making us feel more secure and like our contributions to issues, because we all have them. And it also makes us feel like we're like unique for our values, when like, especially, I'll just speak for myself. I grew up on Bainbridge. I am not unique for my progressive values. I have like the privilege of being educated, being surrounded by a community and friends who allow me and accept me to have these progressive values. Of course I have progressive values because I was given the privilege to have them. And it drives me crazy when like I'm in advocacy circles and like people have nothing but bad things to say about people with uglier views, because if we had been raised in the same way that they were, without the communities, the education, the love that they like, that we would be like them. And so I think that like, I love, and I remember like one of the first, I think probably maybe my first exposure to this idea that like we should love individuals and then like seek to destroy systemic issues was like that MLK quote that I heard a few years ago during the George Floyd protest. I was full of anger, and I thought, for some reason, I thought that like being angry at other people and hating other people was like the way to go. And then I heard the MLK quote that I'm paraphrasing, but love the individual, seek and hate, like hate and seek to destroy the system. So I think, yeah, the messages of love. And then the one other person I want to shout out, because he died a few weeks ago and was the like North Star of our group, was Paul Farmer. Dr. Paul Farmer was just like, oh my God, yeah, he was like our superhero. He just was genuinely so committed to loving every single person. He like believed that everyone had a right to health, no matter like how ugly your like political beliefs were, where you were coming from, the kind of person you were. And I think that, yeah, I just, both of those individuals are so incredible, but Paul Farmer is just on my mind right now because he recently passed. But yeah, I think love is always going to go farther than hate. And I know that everyone says that, but I think that like our arrogance when it comes to politics really does allow us to hate other people, and that just really does nothing. And so I just wanted to mention that really quickly.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, I have both of you. That's both so eloquent and so true to my heart too. And I'm sorry for the loss of, I know it's hard when we lose people, and we then get the opportunity to step in and behave the way that, in a way, their spirit can be closer sometimes. I mean, that's sometimes how I feel. Yeah, we listened to Dr. Frank Kitamoto speak last night, and Emily and Chastity, if you want to paraphrase, or Lily, any of what you heard there from him, but he spoke and said, you know, that really the opposite of love, what if the opposite of love is not hate, but what if it is fear? And so if we think about when we're hating, what is it that we're fearing? And maybe it circles back to ego. You know, maybe we're so needing to be right about our liberal opinions that we are actually fearful of those people that we hate. Maybe we need to look at that. Or maybe we need to look at every human being's experience of fear. And that was the other thing that it reminds me of, is when we would walk along the memorial and we talk about the memorial site, Dr. Kitamoto would always say, you know, this is not a Japanese American story. This is a human story. The way that we do this to each other, this exclusion, it's a national and a human story, and let's learn from that. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. We only have about 10 minutes to wrap up, and I want to be able to give the participants a chance to also ask some questions, but I'm sorry, Gigi, was someone just going to jump in there? Go ahead.
That was me. I just wanted to say that I was thinking about your question about sort of what inspires us, and listening to the conversation about love makes me realize that one of the things that I really value and appreciate about the students that I get to work with and about the adults that I get to work with is what Confucius called Ren. And I teach the Analects of Confucius in Humanities, and it's really fun to talk about this idea of seeking out and recognizing the humanity in others. And we talk about Ren as in acting with human-heartedness, so seeing the human in others and acting in that way. And I think that that's what art is about, that's what community is about, that's what activism is about. And it doesn't mean that we impose our ideas or we don't disagree about things, but we always seek that human in others. And that also makes us examine the human within ourselves a little more deeply too. So it was really interesting to see all those things coming together as you were talking.
Katie, can I add one more about what Gigi just said? And Emily, thank you for sharing that. I learn something every time you talk about that portion of your class. I should have had your class in high school. That would have been awesome. But the power of words and speaking truth to power, Gigi, and being able to call out things. And you and earlier in there, you were talking about love, sex, porn, and you said that, and you go, no, I know I said porn, but I am seeing that students are asking us clearly to be able to discuss things that impropriety, even our Bainbridge Island culture, sometimes we don't say. And they're like, no, we need you to clearly talk about those things in a clear and transparent way. And I really appreciate that, because the power of language and narrative carries the story. So when you said, I come from privilege, I'm allowed to talk this way, you're changing the narrative. And I just think how powerful it is that the words that students, that they're asking us as grown-ups, and I think you're asking us and as people that are around you and other advocates to be clear and to be truthful about what is going on in the world, and call it like it is. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
So well said, Chastity. Thank you. Thanks so much. I definitely also learned so much when you talk and Emily too. Thank you. So I want to invite our participants. So we have some wonderful participants here, and I know that some of them have been big activists in our community, and Emily says we should all know, what was that, Emily? We should all know what?
There we go. Sorry. No, so I have the honor of having Chloe in 10th grade English, and Chloe is an incredible writer. And that made me think of the power of words when you were talking about that just now. Like, Gigi has this incredible public speaking that you've had since you were in like 7th grade, as far as I know. But like, we all express ourselves so differently, and the ability to express oneself aloud in art, in words, it's such a gift to those around us too. And so I just wanted to say that, like, Chloe's a pretty amazing writer too.
So I'm guessing that if someone has a question or a comment, they can either type it in the chat, or at this point, you could just open up your microphone and ask away. I'd like to know a little bit about countering the challenges of the fact that so many of the issues you're dealing with are ultimately unsolvable by any one of us, or really any 5 of us, and how to continue to keep engaged without feeling burnt out or feeling like I can't do it, like this can't be fixed by me. Would either of you like to talk to that question?
Yeah, of course. And I think this kind of goes with like where your motivation is coming from. And I think that we've talked about love a lot in this call, which is so wonderful. And I think that I think if you're doing advocacy with love all the way through, it's a lot harder to get burnt out. And I mean love with like love for the people that you're trying to help, and then also love for yourself, and just realizing that like your worth is not defined to how much advocacy work you do. Like you're not more or less of a good person with the advocacy work you do. And I think when you take more of yourself out of this like social justice work, I think that, and like loving yourself all the way through and loving the people all the way through, I think it's a lot easier to do this work without hating yourself when you're not doing enough. And I know that like a lot of times we think that like hating ourselves for not doing enough is doing something productive in some way. And I know that that's what I felt like for a long time, is when I wouldn't be doing enough advocacy work, I would hate myself and I'd be so upset. I'd feel so guilty that I wasn't doing enough. And I think that's because a lot of advocacy work, I was coming at it like with an egotistical lens, and I was attaching my worth to the amount of advocacy work I was doing, which doesn't do anything good for anybody. So I think love all the way through is what I would say. And then surrounding yourself with people who have these same ideas of love. It is the fact that I get to once a week be in a room full of people who care about the right to health and want to talk about it and do something about it is such a privilege. But I think if you don't have that kind of group, finding one, coming to Global Health Club meetings, or just being that love and support for yourself.
Jessica.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Jessica Guidry. I work for the Kitsap Public Health District, and I'm their Equity Program Manager. So I'm so excited to hear about the Global Health Club. at Bainbridge High School. So last night, while, Bainbridge was talking about equity, so was the city of Bremerton. So I don't know if you all know that the Bremerton Race Equity Advisory Committee had a community conversation about advancing race equity. And one of the themes that came up, I think, over and over again was policy change, but then also representation. And I guess I have two questions. One is, from your experience, getting other classmates, other youth, involved, do you have any tips for us on how we can be more inclusive and just get people involved and inspire folks to join us? And then also, what do you see your role in making a policy change?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the question. I think how to be more inclusive. I mean, I say ego so much, and all my friends make fun of me for saying ego so much, and I guess I'm do that here too. I think if you're doing advocacy work to make yourself feel good, then you're going to exclude other people, and you're gonna you're gonna leave people preferentially unheard. That's a Partners in Health word, and you're not gonna be as inclusive because you're gonna want to see yourself in the spotlight all the time. And this kind of reminds me of Dr. Frank Kitamoto, his project of uplifting all the voices of people who suffered through internment camps and not putting himself at the center. So I think that I mean, yeah, this is a big question, but I think it does need to start with recognizing that you are not the main star of the show, and just genuinely wanting to hear about other people and doing things for love. And what I do probably changed so little. And I mean, our group does so little, and we have so much to learn, and I know nothing, but we do advocacy work. That's one of our pillars. We meet with members of Congress to discuss global health legislation. So that's what policy works looks like. We're actually in the middle of our March Advocacy Month. We're going to be meeting with Derek Kilmer this month, and we're also reaching out to Jaya Paul and Murray. So we do some physical advocacy stuff, which is always really fun. And we're filling out request forms and publishing letters to the editor. So yeah, that's one of our pillars. But yeah, policy work is so important, but so is education. And so is just getting resources to places like Sierra Leone. That's why our pillars are educate, advocate, fundraise. And you can hear that in our mission chant if you ever come to a meeting. But yeah.
Chloe, do you have any ideas about representation or including people in the work that we do?
I mean, Gigi pretty much covered it, but kind of what she said near the end, just once again, just learning, listening, just keeping that in mind going forward. But yeah.
And I appreciate that so much, Jessica. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And, well, I think one thing that I love is I'm noticing just saying the word Bremerton is a big thing on Bainbridge. I mean, we are a little bit of, an island. And so I appreciate you being here, Jessica, and I appreciate us opening up our hearts and remembering we're Kitsap. We are, bigger than just Bainbridge Island. And it's just an honor to have people coming to these programs and wanting to hear student voice. It's the student voice that I'm sure attracted everyone to come today. And I really, really appreciate that. And I'm thinking also of how to engage. So the engagement, the representation, and I'm remembering just Chastity talking about how one of the ways to get students to places is to have a relationship with them, so that if they need transportation, or if there needs to be a way to get there, or if what Emily did, thank you, Emily, today, of creating a space where the adults can remember, hey, it's not just that, the students don't own as many spaces as we own, and so that was another kind of access thing that I was thinking about. So I am sorry that we have just 3 minutes, because I feel like we kind of just got started, but it's just a complete honor for the Historical Museum and for MAC and for the Senior Center and for all of us to hear you, Chloe and Gigi, and we are so excited to be connected to you, and we wish you all the best. And thank you very, very, very much. Hands up. You know, it's funny, at the in-person meeting last night, everybody was kind of shaking their hands like, oh, we're Zoom clapping. So yes, thank you. And thanks everybody. And Reed, thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure, and we're happy to have you come and visit once a month. And we're very grateful to have heard this month from Chloe and Gigi.